So anyway, moving on, Korean language. Before I start talking about Korean language, I have some general questions or two. How many languages are there in the world? Do you remember this question? How many cultures are there in the world? How many are there? The number of cultures in the world? Yes. 10,000. Thank you. So to this question, I guess the number has to be less than 10,000, right? But if you didn't know the answer, what would be your guess? Like how many languages do you think there are in the world that are being used? Roughly. Did you ever think about like how many languages are being used all over the world? This kind of question never came across your curiosity? Anyway, now you do. There are 7,097 languages that are being used today. Okay? Is this like definitive number? No. It's not complete because there are some tribes in the Amazon, to name one, where they have not been, let's say, discovered by civilization. So once we come into contact with them, we could, add more languages to the total. Okay. Anyway, more than half of the languages being used today are expected to be extinct within the next 50 years. You know why? Languages need at least 100,000 speakers for them to pass from one generation to the next. But half of all languages are spoken by less than 2,500 speakers. Okay? So that is why so many languages are facing extinction. Okay? So the similar idea. And just for fun, which country do you think has the largest number of spoken languages? Yes? India. I think it's number 3 or 4, but not number 1. It's a trivia question, but did you say it? US. I'm talking about native languages, not like immigrants.
China.
Only some 50.
Russia.
No. Anyway, here, yes. Good guess, but no. Here we go. Number 1 is Papua New Guinea. It has only about 8 million population, but there are 839 languages. The reason is there are so many islands, right? And that's why they are separated by seas, and so that's why there are so many different languages being spoken in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is followed by Indonesia with 707. Third on the list is Nigeria with 526. And India is number 4. Okay? Good try. Other facts about language. Khmer is the largest alphabet in the world with 74 letters. How many letters are there in English? 26. So you get a sense of like how many this particular language has in its alphabetic system. And that's what it looks like. And you have Rotokas, and it has the world's smallest alphabet with 12 letters only. And that's all it is. Okay? So they could express as many ideas as they can using just 12 letters. And there are 46 different alphabetic writing systems being used in the world. And there are over 200 fake languages. And just for fun, one more thing, I guess, is I'm sure this is an easy question, right? Which book is the most translated book in the world? The Bible. The next one is a little bit more difficult. Second most translated book in the world? Good try. Before your generation, we read things like this, Little Prince. So if you haven't read this book, please take a moment to read the book. Third most translated book. And it's not Quran, it's
Hobbit.
Hobbit. No, I think there's a reason why this book is so widely popular. Because we need more honesty in the world. And what book am I talking about? When I say honesty, what comes to your mind? This. Okay. Now I'll talk about Korean language. In terms of the number of speakers, do you know how many people in the world speak Korean as their native language? How many people in the world speak Korean as their native language? Well, you could start by adding the populations of South Korea and North Korea, and what do you get? How many? 80 million. That's very close. Actually, 81. Okay, 81, right? And how do we get that? Here we go. I have 49 million under South Korea because although South Korean population today is 51 million, 2 million are foreigners, right? So if you just count Koreans, then it's 49 million. And the population of North Korea is 25 million. And we also have 7 million Koreans living overseas, right? So you get 81 million. And that sort of counts as the 12th most spoken language in the world. Okay, in terms of the number of speakers, Korean, believe it or not, is 12th most spoken language in the world. Okay, so I think the ranking could sort of surprise you, right? And it's the Korean diaspora, and you can see how the largest number of Koreans living outside Korea live in China, okay, and followed by USA and also Japan, okay. And just for fun, the world's most spoken languages, number one is Chinese, and I think a lot of you may sort of think that English is the second most spoken language in terms of first language speakers, but it's actually number 3. Okay, number 2 is Spanish. The Korean alphabet. You know, we have a holiday coming up 2 weeks from today, right? You have a week a class. You don't have any class next 2 weeks from today. So maybe it's good to know why. We celebrate. So Korea is one of the only 2 countries that I know, okay, which celebrate this, has a national holiday set aside or celebrating like their language. Okay, which other country does this other than South Korea? It's actually an easy question. North Korea. They also, on a different date. Okay? So we both celebrate Hangul Day. And I don't know if you, if I sound proud, sure, that is not being intended here, okay? But I'm just conveying to you what many linguists say about the Korean writing system, okay? So this, so Korean Hangul is one of the few, if not the only writing system in the world which was invented by someone, or it is credited to someone. Or are there any students who are interested in linguistics? Do you know of any other languages that were commissioned or invented by a particular individual or groups of people? Yes?
The alphabets of a lot of native languages in the US were had to take on the Latin alphabet, but other than that, the one basic, I don't know of anywhere it was really commissioned.
Right, newly created, right? So yes, we have many situations where Latin alphabets were adopted by many I guess groups, but anyway, the Hangul is associated with King Sejong. And did you know, I mean, of course Koreans know this. It started with actually 28 alphabets, but 4 became obsolete. And this is the current alphabets, 24. And these are the ones that were deleted. Yeah? So anyway, I don't know if you read, if you could read Korean, but if you do, it is rather fun to look at. Now, before I turn to the next slide, if linguists say that Korean writing system, or Hangul, is one of the greatest writing systems in the world, why do they say that? Yes?
Because the letters are in the shape of the mouth or of the throat. So for example, this sound like the throat closes, and that's just the shape of the throat.
Okay, that's getting a little bit technical. Yes?
Because it was made for as many people as possible to learn it quickly.
Right.
So I think that's why it's the greatest there is, because it's easy to learn rather than other alphabets.
Okay. Yes.
So as far as I know, a letter with Hangul is composed of consonants and vowels.
Right.
Depending on the numbers and the combinations, they have very different meanings.
Okay. Yes. It's phonetic. Yes, I think what you guys just said are all true, but here's what it is, and I'll just say it in a more plain language. Okay. What am I looking for? It's the last one here. See, Korean, it is written as it is, the way it is written the way it sounds. For example, in English, you see, you learn to pronounce, right? By just looking at the spelling, you cannot spell it, pronounce it right. But with Korean, whatever you read, it sounds exactly the same as it it is written. So, for example, if it is, I don't know if you could read, but this is in English. So, the way you see and you pronounce it, and they're exactly the same. Okay? Whereas in English, oftentimes not the case. And here's a good example. There are so-called silent letters in English. And again, you have to learn to pronounce many words from so-called native speakers. Okay? Because if you just pronounce the way it is written, oftentimes it is different. Right? What stops you from saying joke rather than joke? Right? How do you learn not to say champagne rather than champagne, right? And I'm sure, what about phobia, right? You could easily say phobias, right? I actually caught that from SNL. This guy kept on saying phobias, right? So there you go. So I hope I made my sort of idea clear enough, right? So you could. So again, I think so that someone actually said Korean or Hangul almost comes across as a visible speech, because again, when it comes to sort of writing the way it sounds, it really is, you know, at least one of the best, right? So this is one of the reasons why Korea enjoys one of the lowest illiteracy rates in the world today. And well, you know, if that is true today, that's not much of a news, because we have one of the, you know, best educational systems. But studies show that Korea also had one of the lowest illiteracy rates back in the 1960s, before Korea was industrialized. So this shows that, you know, it must be easy to learn, or it must be easy to teach. Okay? Because even when mass education was not readily available, people somehow learned how to read and write. And that was possibly because the writing system is so easy, right? And that's what linguists say. Are you guys familiar with Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? If not, here it is. They argue that people who speak different languages see the world differently. I mean, that is sort of in a nutshell, what they say. Now, I'm sure this is not your first time hearing this. Is there anybody who sort of disagrees with this idea? Or you could ask yourself, if you're bilingual, okay? Let's say you speak French and you speak Korean, or you speak English and you speak Korean. Do you really see the world differently when you switch from one language to the other? Okay, some are nodding their heads. But the point I want to make is this. When these linguists made this argument, they did not just simply compare English with French, or English with Japanese, or English with Chinese. They looked at how many languages are there in the world? More than 7,000 languages. Not that they actually studied 7,000 different languages, but they looked at so many different languages and they came to this conclusion. Okay? So So if you somehow didn't really feel, oh, how, that there, how could, just because you speak different languages, see the world differently. Again, keep in mind that these scholars base their argument on their studies of many, many languages, not just the main languages, okay? So here are some examples which show that living in different cultures, speaking different languages, could lead you to really see the world differently. Because can you have a worldview that lies outside your language? Let's say you're lying on your bed before falling asleep, daydreaming or whatever. Can you dream about a thing beyond the vocabulary you use? And of course the answer is no, because your imagination, whatever you think about is sort of limited. Your imagination, your thoughts are limited to the vocabulary you use. Okay? So let's say you're born into the Hopi tribe, and all your life you learn to use this one word, Masai Taka, to refer to flying things, and they refer to not only flying insects, but also planes and pilots. If you're born into that culture and you don't have exposure to other languages, other cultures, this is it, right? And also Aztecs had only one word for snow, frost, ice, and cold, and they actually saw them as just one thing, okay? And what about Inuit? They don't have a single word for snow, no noun, but they have different nouns for sort of some 20 different sort of situations associated with snow, like snow on the ground, falling snow, maybe snow good for making snowballs. I just made that up. I don't know if that's really true, but you get my point, right? And also Kuocw of South India do not distinguish among snow, fog, and dew, but their language distinguishes 7 types of bamboo. Okay? And in Somali, there's 47 words related to camels. Okay? Camels good for milking, camels, whatever. Okay? And what about Philippines? You have several terms describing the state of bananas, how ripe they are, and so on. And in the case of Korea, including China and Japan, we have 3 different terms for rice. Can anybody guess what they are? Now, in English, are there more than one term for rice? Right? At least in English, right? Rice is rice. But in Korean, for example, we have 3 different terms for rice. One, rice in the field, unharvested. And what is that? Pyo in Korean. Harvested rice, uncooked, is called sal. And cooked rice, pap. You see? Why? Rice is our main staple food. So if you, like in the case of Filipinos having different terms for bananas, for them, it is their staple food, okay? Very much important for their survival in the past. And for Somalis, camels, same thing, okay? So for things that matter more, I think cultures tend to develop, sort of a specific terms, right? And I don't know about you, but I eat rice for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And anybody in this room who does that? So I call myself ricist. Because I think rice is just a beautiful food with kimchi, that is. So if you ever have to use this term, racist, you gotta quote my name because I invented it. All right. This is really amazing. How many of you remember using crayons? And do you remember how many colors it had? Like roughly, what, 30? I think record was, crayon box with 100 different colors. Okay, but did you know that until the 19th century or so, most cultures had only 5 colors. Okay, and those 5 are white, black, red, green, and yellow. Universal. Okay, and first crayons or Crayolas, they only had this number of different colors in the beginning. Okay, but over time, of course, they added all these colors newly invented, right? And I hope you can look this up. Berlin K theory of colors, and they argue that cultures develop names for colors in stages. Okay, so all cultures have terms for black and white. Every single culture distinguish between white and black, or dark and light. Okay, and if they have a third color, or if they have a term for again, like gravity, okay, like globalization. Although it took us many, centuries, millennia to invent these terms, it doesn't mean that gravity was not around, right? So same thing. Colors are everywhere, right? If you look at the nature, there are so many different colors, but it took humanity such a long time to actually give names to these different colors. Okay? So cultures, small or big, all have at least 2 terms for 2 different colors, white and black. If they have a name for a third color, it's always, what did I say was the third color name? Red. Okay? And if a culture has a term for 4th color, it's yellow or green. Okay? And if and a little bit later, both. Green and yellow. Okay? And then blue, and next stage, brown, and this. Isn't this amazing? How these wonderful scholars are able to come up with this amazing discovery. How people all over the world, living separately without ever being influenced by any other culture, go through the same stages. Okay? And believe it or not, some cultures only have 2 colors still. Okay? Like the examples there. Okay? So going back to the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, if you're born into that particular tribe and you're taught to just see 2 colors, how could you go beyond that, right? That is why the idea that people who speak different languages see the world differently is so sound idea. Okay? And so we have some studies which show that people who do speak different languages or are bilingual actually think differently when they switch between languages, as in this case. Let me just move to the next one. In this particular study, Bilingual Japanese-American homemakers were interviewed, first in Japanese and later in English. And the same questions were asked both times, and the two different answers were compared for each woman. And here it is. When my wishes conflict with my family's, in Japanese, it is a time of great unhappiness. Again, we're talking about this one woman. Same woman, when asked the same question in English, and she answered in English, she answered, I do what I want. You see the difference in value? I will probably become, in Japanese, a housewife. So you can see that this study was done like in the 1960s. So it's slightly outdated. But you get a glimpse into how, again, speaking different languages, you sort of switch personalities maybe. In English, a teacher. Real friends should, in Japanese, help each other. In English, be very frank, which is a very Western value, right? Yes.
I have a question about the question.
Can I ask you to? Okay, here it is. So, what is your name again? I don't know if I asked you before.
I don't know.
Sanya.
Sanneh. S-A-N-N-E.
S-A-N-N-E. Sanne.
Sanneh.
Sanne.
Yes, Sanneh.
Sanna.
So the questions, they were also asked in Japanese and in English.
Yes.
Okay, so how did they, you know how they did the translation of the questions? He said there's a difference in the answers. I wonder if there's also a difference in the question.
Oh, no. It was exactly given the way it is. So this, the English is there, right?
Yes.
So that was translated into Japanese.
Literally.
Yes.
So it also said when my wishes come true with my family.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So we now turn. I like to turn your attention to Korean. Okay. And example number 1. So keep in mind that the language you speak does reflect the core values of the speakers of the given society, right? So in Korea, or Korean has many characteristics, one of which is honorifics. Or before I move on, if this question is given to you, what would you say? What are some of the characteristics of the Korean language? You think? Or what would be a key characteristic of English? I don't know if this is what linguists would say, but it is definitely a language which is very, yes.
And maybe in Korean, the verbs or what you're doing is always at the end of the sentence, whereas in English it's in the middle. So there's a difference in focus there.
I think that is sort of linguist kind of comment, right? So when I say characteristics, it really has sort of nothing to do with linguistics, but rather, like characteristics. I don't know how else I could express this, but for example, English is a language where it is very horizontal, meaning speaker and the addressee, in terms of the status, doesn't matter whom you're speaking to, same language, right? So let's just say it doesn't have any honorifics. Yes? No, it's for the students in Beijing.
Okay. In Korean, you also often omit pronouns. While in English, if you omit a pronoun, it's just not right and the person often will not understand. But in Korean, the 나는, 저는, etc., Korean people don't really use them.
So Korean, in like the Korean language, does not really use pronouns, or does not use pronouns as much as English.
Yes, and also when Koreans talk about my country, like in English we say my country, my home, blah blah. Koreans say 우리나라, 우리나라, 우리. It's always us.
Yes.
In English it's very my.
So what does that show you?
The sense of community is very strong in Korean and in Korea, while in English and like other languages, the sense of individual is stronger.
Okay, very good. So it shows you that the Korean language reflects the collectivistic nature of the speakers or of Korean society, right? Yes.
We have different expressions when we talk in formal ways and also in informal ways.
So are you talking about honorifics then?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
And also it changes when we try to use certain expressions towards elderly people. And according to that, the forms of verbs and different
So, in this class, I can only tease your curiosity. So, for example, honorifics is really a very interesting topic for your, I don't know if you ever try to like ask yourself why different cultures have, like why some cultures have honorifics and why some cultures do not. Okay? Which kinds of societies do you think, or cultures, have honorifics? Equal or hierarchical? Am I asking too many questions? Again, it's just fascinating sort of thing about cultures because again, you're familiar with English, and not every language is like not every language is like English. Okay, and you have, for example, Korean, in which depending on whom you're speaking to, you have to use different verbs, different nouns. To show respect, right? And I have some other examples, and they're really, really interesting. So, honorific is a word or expression with connotations conveying respect when used in addressing a person. Okay, and there are 6 levels of honorifics in Korean, but we typically use just 3 levels. And violation of the honorifics is unthinkable. So just for fun, let's say a Korean wants to take a rest in a mental hospital. All he has to do is to violate this honorifics rule for 2 hours. Okay? Just go around speaking to older person, parents, professors, teachers, again, violate honorifics rule, then that person would be locked up in a mental hospital. That's how, how important this honorifics rule is. Okay? And the examples from other societies are really fascinating. Okay, in many of the Pacific Island societies, such as Hawaii, there is a completely separate honorific vocabulary used when addressing a person who was part of the royal family. I don't know how many of you know, but during the Joseon Dynasty, yes, we had different verbs and nouns for, when we were talking to the king. Okay? So you can see that there are similarities there, right? And other examples include Thai language, where you have 13 different forms of the pronoun. Again, all depending on whom you're speaking to. Okay? And one language which I found really, when I learned about this, I was really shocked, because I thought, because of the linguistic influence Chinese has on Korean, meaning, how we use, or at least in the past, we used Chinese characters, right? So I thought Chinese also has honorifics, but it doesn't. It doesn't have honorifics. It's like English. The only difference is to high-ranked person or strangers, the only distinction that they make is ni and nin. So if you want to say hello, ni hao, is that a hello? Yes. So to almost 99% of the people you meet, you'll say ni hao, because you're like friendly. But to the president of the university, you'll say nin hao. That's the only difference, ni and nin. And that's, it's not really it could also be taken as a sign of distance between the person and the addressee, okay? Not necessarily, top-down relationship like typical honorifics do. And another really fascinating example is Balinese, okay? So it's a society that is very much influenced by Hinduism, and you can understand why they have this. To give you a better sense of what I try to say here, it is this. Now, if you pick up a English-Korean dictionary, if you look for thank, and you will have many entries in Korean, right? I'm talking about English-Korean dictionary. Let's say you pick up a dictionary in Balinese, English Balinese, and guess what you'll see? Let's say you look up thank. So for almost every term, it'll have 3 entries, totally different terms. One for same ranked. Second one for higher ranked person addressing a lower ranked person. Third one, lower ranked person addressing a higher ranked person. Can you imagine that? So this is another example of sort of a cultural variation, right? Example number 2, I'm talking about the examples of the Korean language which are rather unique. And here it's sort of simple, right? Because hierarchy is really important for Koreans, and it is shown in their language. And the way we have ranks and titles for siblings, and also we have all these how we never use our first name. It's right, only among same-aged friends we use names, right? But in social settings, we typically never use our names, and it reflects how we are sort of oriented toward hierarchy rather than equality. So the occupational titles are very important, and So I don't know if this is new to you, but let's say my friends, they never call me by my name at this age. It's always Professor Kim. Okay? And I call my friends also by their occupational titles too. Okay? So, so the only time you really get to hear your name being called is your parents. And again, even among friends, as you get older, you call each other by the first like occupational title. Not all the time, but often enough, right? The third example is the familistic mindset, and what I mean by this is this. You know, in many social settings, you will encounter or interact with people who are older than you or younger than you, right? Then instead of, again, calling their name, you use these terms that you just use for your siblings, okay? So I'm sure students in this room too, right? To your senior, you call them 형, 언니, right? 오빠, right? So those are family terms. And not only that, when you are referring to your friend's parents, you never say, how is your mother? You always say, how's mother? As if the mother is your own, right? Or don't young people do that anymore? Do you get this point? We never call other people's, like friends, parents, as if, I mean, we call them as if they're our own parents. So instead of asking, you know, my friend's, you know, mother, whether she's well or not, I'll never say, how is your mother? It would be almost like, how is our mother? Silent, right? So that's why this sort of familistic mindset is reflected in the way we use those expressions. Okay? And also grandparent, even the you know, old person on the street, we call them by the, we don't make the distinction, right? Their grandfather, 할아버지, right? Or grandmother. Example number 4 is something that was mentioned earlier, collectivistic mindset. So we never say my country, my class, my university. It's always our, right? So here are some examples. Our country, our school, our house, our class, and our church. So this is it gets really interesting when you refer to things like, not things, but person like 우리 아빠, right? Our father, although you're referring to your own father, right? And also our mother. And imagine me taking my wife to a party or to a meeting where her friends are, and I introduce her. I mean, I should have said, imagine me taking her to a party where I'm introducing my wife to my friends for the first time, and it would be like, hey, this is our wife, right? Literally speaking. And this is really a trivial example, but I think it speaks volumes, right? East in the West. You know how your name appears first and the family name? But in the East, family name first and then followed by a given name. Also, the way the address is written. This is the example in Korea, okay? So you start with the state, city, and the street address, and lastly the unit number, right? But in the West, it's totally opposite, right? Name first, and then unit number, and so on, right? Example number 5, sexism. Okay, so sexism in the Korean language. So I guess sexism in language is sort of universal, but I think it's Korean takes this sexism to another level. Okay, and when I show you the examples, you'll know what I mean. Okay, so again, when we talk about the characteristics of any given language, we're talking about the kinds of values that are reflected in the language, right? And of course, Korea has long been a male-dominant society, and this is shown in the language Koreans use. Okay, and here's so you can say that gender inequality is being perpetuated at the level of everyday language. Okay. So here are some examples. You know, we refer to couples as newe, and ne means inside, referring to wife, and we, outside, refers to husband. And ane or ansaram is wife or inside person. 집사람, also referring to wife, house person. Believe it or not, we don't have a single term that is that means wife that is neutral or respectable. Okay. Again, we have a respectable term referring to wife, 부인, but you use that only to others' wives, not your own. Okay? So imagine if I'm to introduce my wife to someone, I have to use English. Okay? 제 와이프입니다. Again, if I want to be politically correct, I cannot use traditional Korean terms. Okay? That's how sexist Korean language is. Okay? Am I missing anything? Do you know of any other terms referring to wife other than the ones I showed you here? Again, 부인 is a respectable term, but you use that only to someone else's wife, not your own. Okay? And we also tend to call someone who is married and who has a child, we use, this is the example, someone's mother, right? So as if she does not have her own identity, right? And what do we call unmarried women? We still use this term, right? Not as often as before. 처녀, which literally means virgin, right? I don't know if you read the news, but in Bangladesh, the Supreme Court finally ruled that marriage certificate remove a term to refer to unmarried women. Same thing, virgin. Okay? So they're gonna change it to unmarried women, not virgin. Okay? So we have a similar situation here. Not legally, of course, but at least in everyday use, we use this. And we use 처녀 in many different contexts. Like someone who has a movie out for the first time, it's 처녀 something, okay? Or first book, 처녀 something, or whatever, right? And we use also to refer to first publication, first flight, okay? And of course, if you want to overcome this sexist language, change 처녀 to 첫, meaning first, okay? So the efforts are being made to change these. And maybe it's a little bit late, but at least efforts are being made. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the English language, has the language English been successful in eradicating sexist language or not? It's still sort of in the process of battling the sexist language? But would you say that there has been a lot of improvement, but still has a long way to go? But let's just say that in Korea we just are starting. Okay? So we're about 40 years behind, I think, because I think this fight to eradicate sexist language in the West, it began like a half a century ago. Okay? I remember when I was a student, it was something that we really had to be careful, right? Another example is the use of the term 미혼. Why is this a problem? This is a question for Korean students. So this means unmarried. Why is this a sexist term? Again, literally it means unmarried. Yes. Oh, no. It's it could be applied to guys too, but it is applied to women more often. Well, the insinuation is this: women who are not married yet. That's the sort of the implication or the insinuation. Okay. Instead of just saying unmarried, it's like, why aren't you married yet? Kind of, right? So the politically correct term is 비혼, unmarried. Okay? Oh, this is really a terrible term. 미망인, and it is still widely used. If you go to a funeral in Korea, and if there's a widow, and there will be a sort of like a plate with the woman's name on it, and it'll say 미망인. And you know what the insinuation is? One who is not dead yet. Okay? Because one who could not yet follow in the footstep of her dead husband. Okay? So this term is related to this concept of 열녀 during the Joseon dynasty, and that is when a woman who was faithful to her dead husband was publicly sort of glorified. Okay, so if you go to some places in the countryside in Korea, you'll see this kind of a pavilion celebrating the chastity or the acts of faithfulness on the part of women And this is the kind of example I'm talking about. Let's say Korea is invaded, okay? And let's say the husbands are have gone to the battlefield, okay, leaving the women behind. Let's say the village was overtaken by the invaders. Now, this kind of pavilion would be set up for those women who committed suicide. For example, in order to to ensure that they remain faithful to their husbands, they took the ultimate step. Okay, so and also during the Joseon Dynasty, remarriage was illegal. They were not allowed to remarry. Okay, so and if husband died, she was expected to remain unmarried till death. Okay, so that's why we use this term 미망인. Okay, still widely used. And you know that Korean married women do not take their husband's surname, and some Korean historians say that this is a sign that we have a equal relationship between men and women. Do you know why this is the case in Korea? Why don't women in Korea adopt their husband's last name? Is it because of their power and sense of equality, or what? The reason why Korean wives do not take their do not adopt the last name of their husbands is because they are not allowed to. Why? Because wives are outsiders. They can never become part of the husband's family. Never. Why? Different bloodline. Okay? So this is an ultimate discrimination. Okay? Where you're not allowed to become, at least symbolically, part of the husband's family. Okay? So it's the same in the Arabic culture. And one of the readings in the textbook talks about 호주제, right? It's now no longer in effect, but according to this household head system, the number one ranked is husband, number 2 son, number 3 daughter, number 4 wife. So the wife was last ranked. Why? No blood ties to the husband. Okay, so and I'll skip that part. Okay, this is a really important one too. In Korean, we make distinctions between relatives on the father's side and relatives on the mother's side. Okay? And how do we make those distinctions? We use this prefix 왜, which means outside, to refer to the relatives on the mother's side. Okay? So literally, you refer to your grandfather on the mother's side, literally saying outside grandfather, outside grandmother, okay, outside cousin. Okay, so I don't know what other examples you could come up with which shows sexism, right, in Korean. And this same prefix 왜 refers to foreigners, right, 외국인, and also 외계인. extraterrestrial alien. Same thing. Same way is used. Okay? So almost they're saying the relatives of the mother, relatives on the mother side are almost equal to like foreigners. And I don't know if I'm going too far by saying extraterrestrial aliens, but same prefix is being used. Okay? But the examples become even more really just striking when you see these terms. Okay? Look at this term, 자궁. It's I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but right? In Korean, it means 자궁. And what is 자궁? 자 means sun. 궁 is house, literally. So this term, I don't know if there's any other term that you could use, but woman's is literally called a house containing the sun. Okay? Where's a space for a girl? Okay? Or daughter, right? What about 자식? Also means it's child, but 자 means son. So even when we use this very generic term, child, the implication is the recognition of only sons, right? And 자손, descendant, same thing. 자 there is in reference to the son. Okay? Aren't these amazing? When I said Korean sexist language takes this one level higher, this is the kind of things I'm talking about. Okay? So again, the efforts are being made to change all these, but what do you replace 자궁 with? Just use English, what about 자식? Or 자손, right? Any questions or comments so far? Example number 6. Communication style. You know that, for example, North Americans value straight talk, and they grow impatient with beating around the bush. So the idea of calling spade a spade is valued. But in Korean culture, as in other Confucian cultures, maintaining harmony is important. So when you value this maintenance of harmony, you wouldn't want to say something that would threaten this harmony or anything that would embarrass, right? The other persons in the group. Okay? So Koreans are, I would say, much less prone to say no directly. Okay? As I'll show you later, a little bit later, in the Korean communication, when Korean says yes, that yes could mean yes, maybe, or no. Okay? But in the Western context, yes means yes, no means no. Is that true or not? Okay? So we have there's actually a scholar by the name of Edward T. Hall. He distinguished between low context communication and high context communication. And Korean, Japanese, Chinese communication belongs to the latter. Okay? So that means, so low context is Western cultures, and they use mostly clear and direct communications, and they prefer direct communication in order to decrease ambiguity and uncertainty. In the low context, I already said this, right? No means no, and yes means yes. But in high context cultures, so they prefer implicative and indirect communication in which meaning could be changed depending on the circumstances. And also in high context culture, no means no could mean no, maybe or yes, and yes could mean yes, maybe or no, right? So this is a nice visual image of the two different communication styles. That's the West, low context, direct, but in the high context culture like Korea, it could be very complicated, right? So I don't know if anybody want to sort of share her or his story about having encountered this kind of a complicated communication situation. Yes, use your, can you get the microphone, please?
What I think is also funny about this is it's also very relative to each other, I think, because you were talking about America being very direct, but I think I come from the Netherlands, and I think we're even lower context culture than the US. So like we really find Americans already not straight to the point, not direct at all.
Oh.
So like we already struggle like communicating with them.
So you guys are more direct, you're saying, than American?
Lower context than Americans, yeah. So we're also kind of struggling with this.
Okay.
That's another.
So there's your Dutch connection, right?
Yes, and I think that even within the Netherlands, there's also differences because I'm from Amsterdam, but I study in the south, and I think in the south people are also considered less direct than in the north. So in the south people would say, oh, people in the north are more direct, and in the north people will say people in the south are less direct. Yeah.
So here's one other example of Koreans being less direct. If someone brings a gift to someone, a typical reaction is not thank you. It's always, oh, no, 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 and then thank you, right? But ultimately, deep inside, you know, the person receiving the gift is appreciative. But instead of being direct in saying thank you, you know, it's always like, oh, no, 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 right? And not only that, let's say my son brings a friend to my house and it's 7 o'clock and obviously they didn't eat. And if my wife goes, hey, you guys want to have dinner? You know what the friend will typically say? Oh, no, no. You know, dinner time, young and hungry, but still, it's sort of a cultural expectation is for him to say no, no, no a few times as a sort of a courtesy, right? But that's just a perfect example of high context, right? And of course, my wife knows this, so that she still cooks for the friend, right? So she reads beyond, you know, what is apparent, right? So when people from two different cultures interact, a problem could arise. Now I'm gonna skip this part because it's too long. But the point here is this: that we use the verb 먹다, to eat, to express so many different things, right? Like champion 먹다, to win something. What about 더위 먹다, eat heat, right? or 겁먹다, 애먹다, right? 물 먹다, right? There's so many different expressions. And so if you're interested in this, look into why Korean happens to have so many expressions using the verb to eat, and something, you know, that has to do with eating, okay? And of course, Korea is not alone when it comes to starvation throughout history, but somehow our ancestors have developed this way of sort of projecting their hunger onto language. Okay, so anyway, I'll just move on. So now I want to talk about Korean norms. So far we talked about Korean symbols, Korean language, the third, Korean norms, and this one should be it won't take us too long, this part, because norms, as you remember, are rules of behavior, okay, rules of conduct, things you should do and things you should not do. And my question to you is a very simple question. Can you think of any examples of Korean norms? Very simple question, right? Yes?
To bow.
You bow to greet each other. What else? Yes? You don't write people's names in red ink because you do that only for the deceased individuals. So if you have any friend back home that you don't like, you know what to do. Just kidding. Yes?
Sans respect. Sans respect.
Sans
respect.
Sans respect. What do you mean by that?
I mean, the younger and older men's always older men's. Yeah, yes, that's okay. Younger men's. Sans respect.
Sans respect.
Yes, in my language we follow this text like sans respect.
I'm not quite sure I follow that.
I don't even know what that means in Russian.
So she spoke Russian to you?
Yeah, she just explained it to me in Russian and I didn't quite answer to it, but I think it means like like a son showing respect to the father, but in Korean society it happens even between strangers.
Oh, so you're talking about respect for the elderly?
Yeah, like anywhere, like on the street, like if you just bump into someone, you just like always like, oh, son, and you just like, yeah.
Oh.
That kind of stuff, I guess.
Okay, good. Yes? Okay, eye contact. So you avoid keeping straight eye contact for a long time, right? You sort of look, but then you look down, so you sort of do that on a regular basis so that the other person doesn't feel threatened or challenged. Anything else? Okay, let's see what I have here. We bow, we already said that. Then this is sort of getting a little bit specific, right? So subordinates must greet or bow first, okay? And if you want to be also mindful, you sort of try to bow a little bit deeper, right? Or lower than superiors. And when you're shaking hands, you try to use both hands, right? If you're shaking the hand of superiors, and subordinates, this is getting a little bit too nitpicking, but if you want to impress superiors, you try to do that, I guess. You know why I have that here? I think we try to be sensitive to different cultures, right? So the Asian guy is sort of trying to be like a Western style person by trying to shake hands, but the Western guy also trying to be culture sensitive by sort of bowing like Asians do, right? We use honorific in speaking to strangers, older people, and so on. But this is really, really important, right? We pass or receive objects using both hands, right? And I already talked about that, right? We don't call anyone by the first name. Here's the avoiding direct eye contact. And I don't know how many of you went out drinking with Koreans, but maybe it's just a old people thing, but we don't fill our own glass, right? We sort of wait for others to pour drinks for us. So is this what young people do too? Okay, so and do you also offer your empty glass to your friends? Or is that too much? You know how when Koreans finish their drinks, sometimes they pass on their empty glass, the used one, to someone sitting in the front or next to him or her, right? You've never done that? Yes, so someone. Let's say you're drinking with this guy sitting in front of you, right? He would finish his drink, and he would pass on his empty glass to you, and then pour a drink for you. No. Well, if you want to try something Korean, that's something you have to do. Okay? It really promotes unity, they say. She's shaking her head. And turning sideways when drinking alcohol in front of an older person, right? That is to show respect. And when toasting, lower your glasses below those of superiors. Again, you sort of try to make an effort to show respect again. Okay? Covering your mouth when yawning or laughing, especially for females. Could we say that this is universal? Maybe yawning is universal, but laughing, is there a cultural expectation for females to cover their mouth when laughing? Yes. In UK there is. Okay, maybe it's universal, but it's more sort of pressured. I mean, I'm talking about females in Korea, right? Don't blow your nose in the presence of others. And this is definitely Korean, not North American for sure, where I think blowing your nose is your like a #1 human rights issue kind of. No? Even in a classroom full of 500 students, students would blow their nose. Okay? Anyway, don't leave a spoon or chopsticks in your bowl standing. You know why that is, right? You do that only for your ancestors during ancestral rituals. Do not shake a leg while sitting. Guess why? The elderlies believe that this chases away good luck spirit, or spirit that brings good luck. Public display of affection is frowned upon. Is this still true or no? Wow. At least for me, you know, at least from the places I walk, I guess, okay. But compared to, let's say, the West, right? Where it's the opposite now.
There's like everywhere. Oh my gosh.
On campus.
On campus, everywhere you go. I'm just like, I don't know, it makes me feel like so single.
Wow. Because when I walk around, all I see are like these cats. And on the subway, I never saw anybody kiss up to this point. But if I were to take subways in North America, you know, kissing is like the norm, right?
Take the first subway on Saturdays.
Oh, take the subway on Saturdays.
The first subway, the first train on Saturday, you'll see a lot.
Is it alcohol influence of it? No? Aye. What happened? So I gotta delete this then, right? Okay, I should say public display of affection is frowned upon by the elderlies. Okay? Young people don't. Okay, this is also, it must be deleted too. Young people don't care no more, right? An older person pays. I think it is still true, although for young people like you, it's Dutch, right? Dutch pay, or in Korean, 엠분의 1, right? Men pay. Is this true? Men pay more. No? It's just totally equal. Okay, I have to update this. And this is it doesn't really apply to you, right? Because I don't think you'll go to a restaurant serving course meals. But I think at least when you take a taxi, keep in mind, taxi drivers do welcome tips. Just taxi, right? And just, I'm not talking about like giving necessarily bills of any kind, but at least change, right? And I'll skip this. All right, next is Korean beliefs. So every culture, no matter how small or big, has a set of beliefs, and it tells you what things or what are true. Okay, it informs you about what truth are. Okay, and you know, while belief can stem from religion, myth, folklore, or even science, most cultures derive their beliefs from religions. Is that good enough? Right? And in the case of let's say the West, if you were to talk about their beliefs, what would you talk about? This is a real easy question, no? Again, beliefs can stem from religion, myth, folklore, or even science, but most cultures derive their beliefs from religion. Okay? Now, oh, yes?
No, I wanted to say something, but you already, like...
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
No, like, because you talked about the West.
So, right.
One of the things I would say is, like, I wanted to say religion, but you said it.
Oh, sorry, I'll look at the monitor more often from now on. Okay, thank you. So, in the case of the West, what religion am I talking about? Christianity, right? There's only one religion. But if you were to talk about religions in Korea, it's more complicated, right? What do you talk about when you want to talk about beliefs in Korea which are shaped by their religions? So, Confucianism is one. What else? Hmm? Buddhism? Yes. Thank you. And what else? Hmm? Shamanism. One more. Or Christianity, right? So we have to talk about 4 religions. Not just one, but 4. And is everyone familiar with shamanism? So here it is, right? It's an animistic religion which believes that everything has a spirit, okay? Including your ancestors. And these spirits exert influences on your fate. Okay? So if you believe that, if something not so good happens to you, what do? You invite a shaman to your house in order to hold the ritual to chase away an evil spirit that is causing the ill, the misfortune. Okay, so until the turn of the 20th century, Koreans really practiced quite extensively this religion, right? And when I was little, I still remember hearing the drum beat and the music of shaman rituals, right? Ever so often. Okay? The second one is Buddhism, and again, by showing you these, I want you to look these up. Okay? So type shamanism in the Google and see what you get. To get the more knowledge of the profound meanings and doctrines and ideas involved with shamanism, and the same thing goes for Buddhism. Again, you don't have to be a Buddhist to appreciate the teachings of Buddhism. So, is there anybody who follows Buddhism? Or what do you know about Buddhism? Yes.
It is a polytheistic religion, so that accepts a lot of gods as gods, which is why it's very popular, because it accepts shamanistic gods as well.
Okay, so one characteristic of Buddhism is that it is polytheistic. It has many gods, and it could easily embrace new gods. Okay, what else? Yes.
We get reborn after our...
Okay, so it believes in reincarnation, right? So you die, and depending on the karma that you have accrued, you are reborn as a lesser being or higher being, right? Anyway, in terms of the doctrines, and I want to tease your curiosity about Buddhism, and I'm not Buddhist, by showing you these ideas. Here we go. So, Buddhism is a religion which believes that the ultimate goal in life is to attain the transcendent state of nirvana, achieved by realizing the 4 noble truths. And you know what these 4 noble truths are? It's really easy to memorize. That suffering is an innate characteristic of existence. Second, cause of suffering is the desire. Third, ending the suffering can be attained by eliminating all desires. Isn't this simple enough? 4 noble truths argue that life is full of suffering. Okay? And why is life full of suffering? Because you have these desires. Okay, and how do you get rid of these desires? How do you end this suffering? You get rid of these desires. Okay, and the last one is the Noble Eightfold Path is the means to end this suffering. And what are the eightfold path? Here we go. Again, you don't have to be a Buddhist to appreciate these ideas. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to have right views all the time? Right resolve? Right speech? How often do we hurt each other by saying the wrong things, right? So whenever you want to say something, think twice, as the saying goes. Right conduct. You know, and also right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. All these things will make you end the suffering. Okay? So you do all these, you could escape the cycle of suffering and rebirth. So again, this is just a part of what Buddhism is all about, and I want you to explore not only Buddhism but other religions too, right? Third is Confucianism, and it's of course more of an ethical, socio-philosophical teaching, which stresses the importance of the family and social harmony, self-cultivation, reverence for parents and ancestors, ancestor worship, mourning ceremonies, and harmony in thought and conduct. So the only religious element in Confucianism is ancestor worship. Okay? And it is based on the belief that deceased family members have a continued existence, and that the spirits of the deceased ancestors possess the ability to influence the fortune of the living. So I don't know if you know this much, but the essence of ancestor worship is that the spirits of the ancestors are still alive, and they also exert influences on your fate. So what do? Like you pray to gods or God, you pray to their spirits. Okay? You know, asking for their blessing. Okay? Asking them to, you know, take care of your family and so on, right? So, so I guess for those of you who are new to this idea, it may be quite alienating or different, but anybody with a thought on ancestor worship? Especially foreign students? Is this really strange, or is it something you could relate to? Yes? Can you hold on for a second?
I know in like the UK, like our traditional faith and beliefs, like say Halloween especially, like it's seen as a time when spirits come back from like the veil between like the spirit world and the world we're in. Like the living world is thinner, so like the idea of pumpkins with a candle in, like the candle is to show the way for your ancestors to come into your home and stuff. And like it's really common to, especially on the day when, at the anniversary of an ancestor's death, to, you know, take time out and think about them and stuff, even if you're busy.
Oh.
It's quite frowned upon to just, you know, carry on as it is, like taking time out especially.
Wow. At least sort of a personal sort of observation. I never really made this connection between Halloween and ancestors or ancestors' spirits. So thanks for your input. Anyone else? Yes. Or you had a.
In Islam, for example, there's not ancestors, like we don't worship them as much, but we have to include them in prayers so that they will have a good afterlife. So whenever you pray or like you read the Quran, you have to like include them in the prayers, or you have to read some prayers for them out of the Quran. So you have always to remember them as well.
Okay. Well, even in Christianity, right? You do pray that the spirits of the like dead ancestors, are in peace or in heaven, right? But it is definitely different from ancestor worship, where we actually pray to them for their blessings, right? As if they are gods. That is why when Catholicism was introduced to Korea, it was considered a form of idolatry, right? And Protestant Christianity in Korea still does. So you're not supposed to sort of conduct ancestor worship in Korea. Although Catholicism has changed its view on ancestor worship, where it is seen as a cultural practice. So, the Catholics in Korea can practice ancestor worship. Yes? Yeah.
So in Mexican culture, we have Day of the Dead, and then basically you make an altar that has all of the photos of deceased family members. And so even though it's not like a worship, it's supposed to be a time when you're supposed to reflect on your ancestors' lives, and like you're supposed to try to take lessons and learn from decisions that they've made. So it's not really like, it's more of like an individual way of like it's not like they control your fate, but it's like you're supposed to learn from what decisions that they've made in the past in order to better yourself and have like a better future. So just a little different, but.
Okay. Thank you. So I think to simplify what I just said, I think in the Korean ancestor worship, you pray to your ancestor spirits, whereas in Christianity or Islam, you pray for them. And maybe in the case of Mexican belief, it's sort of you sort of learn from them, right? Anyway, let's move on. And the last one, Christianity, I'll just pass with a note that it is now the largest and the third largest religion. Okay, the largest meaning Protestant Christianity, and Catholicism currently the third largest religion in Korea. And here's a chart showing religious population in Korea. So as you can see, according to the latest census, largest religion is Protestant Christianity with 9.6 million Koreans who are following Protestant Christianity. Second largest religion is Buddhism with 7.6 million followers. Third largest is Catholicism with nearly 4 million followers, right? So from 2005 census, you know that there has been a real noticeable decline in membership in Buddhism. Same thing with Catholicism. So it would be really interesting to learn how the trend of religious population will pan out for the next census in 2025, because although these numbers look really impressive, the kinds of impression you get by actually going to church is that you really don't see like a lot of young people at churches anymore, right? And sort of a lot of empty pews, right? So maybe the numbers are a little bit exaggerated. We really don't know, but we'll see. But I don't know if you noticed, but one of the key sort of figure here that is sort of eye-catching is this one. No religious affiliation. So as of 2015, 56% of the Korean population have no religious affiliation. Now, do you think this 56% is about average of the world trend, or lower or higher compared to, again, world trend? What is your thought? About the same? Lower or higher? Higher by how much? A lot, right? And so again, keep this in mind. 56% of Koreans, no religious affiliation, and this is the world's population by religion. Okay, same year, 2015, only 16% of the world population have no religious affiliation. So Koreans are really unique in this regard. Okay, a whopping 56% of Koreans with no religion. Maybe that accounts for such a high suicide rate. I don't know, because one thing that religion does for sure is that it does provide a sense of comfort, right? It provides meaning, and studies after studies have shown that it does a lot of good things for the believers, okay? Whatever the religion may be. So this is again, I think, by showing the sort of this comparative data, you really get a good sense of how unique this Korean situation is as far as the proportion of the population who don't have any religious affiliation is concerned. Okay? And this one is rather interesting in showing that when it comes to religious diversity around the world, Asia is the only region in the world where it is very high. Okay? And sub-Saharan Africa also high, but rest of the world, moderate or low. And I think the ones here are, only just like one religion, right? Like Middle East. And also Latin America, just Christianity, right? And Europe is moderate, comparatively speaking, but is, pretty much low, right? Almost like dominated by Christianity. This graph shows which nationalities consider religion most important. And do you see your country here? Well, I see USA here. I was looking for Netherlands. It's not there, right? And you know where Korea is, right? Very low. And also low is Japan and China, right? And it shows that generally speaking, poor nations tend to be religious. Okay, so the countries that are crowding the top part here, right? Their GDP per capita is less than $10,000, but their faith or the idea that so many of them have this belief that religion is really important in their life, right? Okay, yes?
What would you say is the relationship between GDP and religion? Like what is causing what?
Well, there are many theories in sociology trying to explain why people turn to religion, right? And one of the theories is that when people are deprived, okay, they tend to want to find compensation by turning to religion. That is one theory, right? So as you can see there, the countries with the highest proportion of the population, saying that religion is really important in their life, they happen to be poor countries, and that particular theory is very applicable here. Okay? Any other questions or comments? Okay, now last one. Can you believe this? We have come to the last of the 5 most important cultural elements, which are most important in understanding, let's say, Korean culture. And of course, values are ideals about what is right or wrong, good or bad, and desirable or undesirable in a particular culture. And although I don't have it here, there are values which are more personal. There are values which are shared. Let's say cultural values, okay? And some values are in between, okay? So keep that in mind. So just for fun, what would be a very important personal value? It is a personal value because when people are asked to identify their cultural values, this almost never makes the list of, let's say, top 20 cultural values. And yet, to your personal life, it's very important. No? Yeah. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Could you repeat what the student before said, because we didn't hear it?
Students didn't say anything for the last 5 minutes or so.
Ah, okay, because we can't see anyone here. We just see the PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
I would have an example.
Yes, please.
We talked about it last week when you were here in China, and we talked about friendship.
Right. Okay. Can you think of any other personal values?
Hello?
Yeah. But in addition to friendship, since you know what I'm getting at, would there be any other sort of a person-focused values or individual values?
Family.
Huh? Family. Oh, that's more shared, right? It's. I think that will count more as a cultural value. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, you said something else the last time. You said happiness.
Yes. You have a good memory. Yes, happiness. I think is really an important value for everyone in this room, I would say, right? Yes. Can you, okay, microphone please. Speak loud. Yeah.
And now, okay. I don't believe it counts as a value, but liking your job over making money, like choosing passion over money is like a value that you choose.
Well, I think passion.
Yeah, passion.
Could be definitely a personal value, right? Have passion. Yes.
I think there are some of the topics that Koreans refrain.
Right, John.
Okay, so I think there are some of the common topics that Koreans actually refrain from talking about with public conversation or conversation with strangers, such as religious beliefs, religious values, or preference, or political stances. So I think that political stance especially are some of the standards of how people judge what is right or wrong, but we don't force other people to believe what I believe. So I think that's part of the values, personal.
But can you say that in like one, like as a term? Like in happiness or friendship?
I have no idea.
I mean, I think you have good ideas, but it's just that I want to sort of narrow it down to like a term or two. Just an idea, but
Yeah, political correctness.
Political correctness. Okay, that could be that could definitely count as a personal value. Thank you. Anyone else? Personal value. Before we move on to cultural values, where they're more shared with others. Family was mentioned, but that is definitely a cultural value where it's sort of universally recognized as a cultural value of, I would say, every culture, right? Anyone else? So, okay, then move on to cultural values. And so, my question, as always, what do you think are the most important values, cultural values of Koreans? Or what are the most important values for Korean culture? Yes? Success, thank you. Very important. Wealth, yes, that too. Anything else? Yes?
Harmony.
Harmony, yes. Rather than competition, right? Yes?
Education.
Education, thank you. You guys are 4 for 4. Really good, yes. Family, thank you. Yes. Yeah. Long life. My God, it's like you guys have my notes. Eva, any thoughts on this question?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say education, but someone else said that, so sorry.
Okay, anyone else? So far, 6 for 6. Yeah. Hard work. 7 for 7. Respect. Respect who?
The elderly.
Yes, you gotta say respect the elderly, because unlike the Bible, which says, you know, I think compared to the respect the elderly, I like, without being a Christian, you know the saying from the Bible? Treat others like you would like to be treated. It's just a wonderful saying, right?